a motor vehicle to which I am not operating a motor vehicle. And this is what we are trying to
I guess.
circumvent.
Yeah,
I am
and
operating my
it's not
automobile,
circumventing.
not a motor vehicle.
I will ask you this. How is your right to travel removed
by
by
trying
receiving
to
the
require
citation?
by trying to require me to have a license to operate a automobile, which is my private vehicle.
Today's court hearing is shaping up to be quite interesting. We have a person who identifies as a sovereign citizen, and they believe that because they are traveling rather than driving, they are not required to have car insurance. The attorney and magistrate both take their time with this individual, and the discussion becomes quite tense. Personally, I feel the magistrate might have been a bit too patient in this case. It seems like the situation could have been resolved more quickly. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think the magistrate was too lenient, or do you believe he managed the situation well? Let's see how it plays out.
Infraction. If you were found responsible, all other things being equal, the court would assess $125 fines, costs, and fees. It is a 0-point ticket. And in the second case that ends with the letter B, that same date, time, and place, you were issued a citation for having an expired registration plate. That is also a civil infraction. It is also a 0-point civil infraction. If you were found responsible, all other things being equal, the court would assess $110 fines, costs, and fees. So first question, is that the ticket or the two cases that you thought you were appearing about, Mr. Williams?
It is.
Okay. And same question to you, Officer Kellums?
Yes, sir.
Very good. In every civil case, the plaintiff has the burden of proof. And in a case like this, that burden of proof is called by a preponderance of evidence.
Only question I have is, will the laws of the U.S. Supreme Court be applicable? And the federal statutes and definitions of motor vehicle and automobile be applicable in this proceeding?
They are the state of Michigan laws that will be applicable.
Okay. The other question is, are you already not bound by U.S. Supreme Court rulings?
Every court is bound by relevant Supreme Court rulings.
Okay. All right.
I'm not sure why you're asking that, but that's okay. All right, Officer Kellums, if you would begin, please.
So on November 19th, 2024, I was on patrol for the Battle Creek Police Department. When I observed the vehicle that Mr. Roosevelt was driving, I observed that it had expired tags on the vehicle. I then conducted a traffic stop on Fountain Street near Meacham Ave. Found Mr. Williams to be driving the vehicle, where I issued him the citations. When speaking with Mr. Williams, he could not provide insurance, and his tags were expired.
All right. Did Mr. Williams say anything to you during the stop about having insurance or not having insurance, or anything about the tags on the plates, anything like that?
He informed me that he did not have to have insurance due to that he was traveling, and to drive a vehicle, you have to have insurance. Something regarding Supreme Court. That's about all he said.
Okay. All right. Do you want me to consider anything else at this point, Officer Kellums?
No, sir.
Okay, Mr. Williams, could you hear Officer Kellums' testimony?
Yes, I heard his testimony.
Very good. Thank you for your patience. What do I need to know, sir?
Okay, I did inform Officer Kelly that I am not operating a motor vehicle, but I am operating an automobile. I did inform Officer Kelly of the ruling of Rodriguez v. Ray Donovan, U.S. Department of Labor, 769 Federal 2nd, 1344, where the U.S. Supreme Court's decision has ruled that all codes, rules, and regulations are for government authorities only and not for human creators. In accordance with God laws, all codes, rules, and regulations are unconstitutional and lacking due process.
All right, I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. Are you telling me that a case at 769 Fed 2nd, 1344 indicates that all laws are unconstitutional?
This sovereign citizen brings up Rodriguez v. Ray Donovan as part of his defense for not having insurance. But honestly, that case doesn't apply here. It was about a specific situation in another state and doesn't change Michigan's laws. In Michigan, you can't just claim you're traveling to avoid the law. I'm not sure why he brought up this case, maybe thinking it would help his argument, but the magistrate clearly knows the law better. The outcome seems pretty clear. What do you think? Why did he think this case was relevant? Sometimes their reasoning is hard to follow.
And if
Well,
I'm not
and
mistaken,
you said that was Department of what?
U.S. Department of Labor.
Okay, U.S. Department of Labor doesn't publish decisions in the Fed second. Um,
Okay,
can you
that
tell
is
me a little
incorrect.
bit more about the case? What was at issue in the case?
It was regarding what we're discussing here, the requirements of a driver's license and the need when it's required to have one, stating that when you're not operating commerce, to which I informed the officer that I am not operating commerce as stated in USC 18 USCA 31 paragraph A6 states that a motor vehicle, the term of motor vehicle meaning every description of carriage, contrivance, propelled or drawn or mechanical powered and used for commercial purposes. This is what Title 18 USCA Section 31A6 states or defines as a motor vehicle to which I am not operating in commerce. I'm not
For
using.
the purposes of that particular chapter of the United States Code, it would not control what happens in terms of the Michigan legislature defining in Chapter 257 what a motor vehicle is, and an automobile
Right.
under Michigan law is a motor vehicle. But okay, continue.
Right. It's a motor vehicle, which is described as anything, even by the Michigan compliance statute of 751, which you just stated, is determined as something that's transporting goods, which I'm not transporting goods.
I understand your position, and I can tell you that that position doesn't happen to be legally correct. But go ahead.
So you're basically stating that there's a misinterpretation.
This person seems to be testing the magistrate, even trying to put words in his mouth. Not a great strategy when the magistrate holds the power to decide your outcome. In court, you really don't want to challenge the person who can determine whether you face fines or other consequences. I'm not sure if he's just misinformed like many sovereign citizens, or if he's trying to outsmart the magistrate. Either way, it's interesting to watch. He even brings up more cases, so let's see what he says next.
No, I'm telling you that you have misinterpreted the application of 18 USC 31A6 and 769 F second or Fed second 1344.
Okay,
But
well, I see where
I've
this
heard
is
your
going.
argument.
So there will be no further arguments because I see that you're not going to agree to. Because, like I said, I've given it to you the cases where they're like Shapiro v. Thompson, where the U.S. Supreme Court has said that a driver license is not a requirement, that you're trying to convert a right into a privilege, to which is covered by Article 1, Section
All right,
8, to
well,
which
I'll ask you this. Is that right, the right to travel?
that is a right to travel, convey, however you want it, by
Well,
the U.S. Constitution.
what you just told me was that somehow but regardless, am trying to convert a right into a privilege. Now, the question I have for you is what right has been converted to a privilege?
My right to freely travel
Okay, very
unencumbered
good.
and
Now,
unfettered.
I will ask you this. How is your right to travel removed
by
by
trying
receiving
to
the
require
citation?
by trying to require me to have a license to operate a automobile, which is my private vehicle.
Okay. All right. Is there
That is
anything
my
else you want me
that,
to consider?
no, sir.
All right. Well, I can tell you this. The Michigan motor vehicle laws, including the laws that require you to carry insurance, that require your vehicle to be registered, and require that registration to be current, do not run in violation of any right to travel under the Constitution or the United States Supreme Court decision that you have cited. In fact, Michigan courts have held that essentially the right to travel means the right for you to move from A to B, not the right for you to travel from A to B under your most convenient way. So you could walk from point A to B all you wanted. You could take a taxi or an Uber or a plane or a train or a bus. But if you wish to travel by using a motor vehicle, the Michigan laws are applicable and don't unconstitutionally interfere with the right to travel. It doesn't convert the right to travel into a privilege. You are not denied the right to travel. You may be denied the privilege of traveling via a motor vehicle that you are operating.
This court hearing really needs to come to an end. The sovereign citizen can't even quote the cases he's written down correctly, almost like someone trying to give a book report without having read the book. It's honestly a bit frustrating to watch. I'm not sure how the magistrate is being so patient with him at this point. It almost feels like the magistrate is trying to explain basic law to a brick wall. I know it's part of his job, but this seems like an excessive amount of explanation. What do you all think? Let's dive back in for the sentencing.
So
Okay, so I
that
stop
is
you
that is what the law says, and that's what I'm finding. Is there
okay,
anything else you
so
want me to consider about that finding?
Shuttleworth v. Birmingham, US 147. Do you mind telling me what the US Supreme Court ruled in that?
US 147 doesn't give me the site of a case. That's an
Uh,
incomplete site of a case. Okay.
it was Shuttle.
And if you wish me
I
to
said
consider the case,
Shuttleworth.
why don't you tell me what was at issue in the case and what year it was decided?
I said Shuttleworth v. Birmingham, US 147, 1969, where it
Okay,
says
you hold
no
on. US
license.
147 is not a complete cite. The way you cite to a case is by name and then volume number and then the name of the publication and then the page number. So, for instance, when you said 769 Fed Second 1344, what that means is volume 769 of a book or volumes called The Federal Reporter, second edition, at page 1344. So when you're asking me about this most recent case that you've talked about, what you said was US 147, I think. That's not the citation to a case. So you're going to have to tell me more about that case. Who were the
Okay,
parties to that case and what issue was before the Supreme Court in that case?
okay, so you didn't hear me cite the name of Shuttleworth v. Birmingham?
I heard you say the name. That doesn't
Okay,
tell me that's not a complete cite of the case.
all right. Do you not have the documents that I filed when I filed to say that I want to have an informal hearing? The affidavit that writes that my
There are documents that have been scanned into the court that you dropped off.
okay.
So
So
from
even if
those documents, why don't you tell me the proper citation for Shuttle versus Birmingham?
okay, traffic infractions are not crimes, blah blah blah. Person faced with okay.
Right.